I'm Alistair Stevens.
I'm Elizabeth Ray.
And Tom Cruise is Les Grossman in Tropic Thunder. The difference between satire and parody is an interesting and subtle one. Both intend to ridicule their target by highlighting the contradictions and the excesses and the stupidities, but they do it in different ways. Parody does it by imitating and heightening the form of the target itself, while satire doesn't. Some people would add in a third category here too, the spoof, which, unlike parody and satire, is defined not by the content of the target itself, but by the genre or the form. So, Spaceballs is a parody of Star Wars. Robin Hood Men in Tights is a spoof of Robin Hood movies and is occasionally a specific parody of Robin Hood Prince of Thieves. Parody looks like the text it is making fun of. Spoof looks like the genre it is making fun of. And satire doesn't look like the thing it's making fun of at all. Easy, right? And we should note that parody and satire aren't even necessarily funny. They can also be put to excoriating, critical use. Jon Stewart is frequently very funny, but not all of his satire comes cloaked in laughter. Now, here's the problem. The definitions that I just gave you are true, but they are also soft because almost every element of those definitions rests upon something subjective, or at least arguable. We presume to know what the intent of the author is, which we shouldn't. We have to interpret how similar or dissimilar a given work of art is to another, which is challenging at best. We have to filter an entire genre and find the representative qualities and then see how they're represented in an individual work. I mean, we even have to determine with a somewhat rigorous objectivity whether or not a given joke is intentionally funny, unintentionally funny, or not funny at all. Mm-hmm. Is Austin Powers a parody, a spoof, or a satire? Which of these is Galaxy Quest? What about Jordan Peele's Get Out? All of which is to say that nothing in popular culture is as difficult to assess or as divisive as comedy, and that's before you get to the words of 20th century children's author E.B. White, who famously said, quote, "Analyzing humor is like dissecting a frog. Few people are interested, and the frog dies of it." Mm-hmm. And if that's true of all comedy, and it is, then it's doubly true for parody and satire. Elizabeth, are we going to kill Tropic Thunder by discussing it here on the podcast? And if so, ought we to be congratulated?
We are going to dissect this frog. I'm not sure who's going to benefit from it, except that I do think that going over the reasons why certain things make us laugh and certain things make us cringe and why sometimes we want both of those things to happen is interesting.
I think so too. Are you a fan of this kind of heightened parodic comedy, this type of comedy that ostensibly at least takes another genre or another form to task?
Generally, no. I guess I was when I was a kid. Like the one that you mentioned was, Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Sure.
I, of course, thought was hilarious when I was a kid. But I can't imagine enjoying it now.
Yeah.
I think I'm more the dry satire type, which is probably not surprising.
Well, what do you think of the satire of Tropic Thunder, just at the very highest level? Do you think that this is a well-intentioned film? Do you think that the target that it sets its mark upon is worth lampooning in this fashion? And I guess I'm even begging the question there, right? What is the target that Tropic Thunder is seeking to strike?
It seems to me that the target is sort of Hollywood itself and like the movie making machine.
Sure.
And actors also. But I think that's a really hard thing to satire when you're so deeply embedded in it, especially by Ben Stiller, who's, we were just saying, a Nepo baby anyway, like has never known a life or world outside the movie making industry.
Yeah. So
it seems like he doesn't understand the thing he's poking fun at in an interesting or objective way.
Sure. To whatever extent there is like an objectivity to be found here. I mean, it's
sure.
One of the things that the film's kind of interrogating is that notion of subjectivity, is that notion of entering into something voluntarily, entering into a fiction voluntarily transforms both you, but also the fiction. And there's maybe some, and I just made that film sound way more interesting than it actually is. And that's the problem. That's my experience of watching Tropic Thunder is like every 10 minutes or so, something will happen. And I will think, that is interesting. There is some friction. There is some crunch there. There is something happening there that is pointing to a much more interesting deconstruction of exactly this kind of bombastic and self-congratulatory form of Hollywood movie making. I think we'll talk a little about that as we get into our discussion. But we're going to begin, of course, with the trailer game. Now, Tropic Thunder famously begins with 3 fake trailers.
Which I think is great. Yeah, it makes me be like, can we skip the trailer game? But
I mean, in a sense, they've done our work for us.
They really did. And if anything, I would like to take a minute to talk about why their trailers and our trailer games are actually so similar, because I was surprised by that.
Yeah. Okay,
right?
Let's hear it.
So when I had the idea initially for the trailer game, I was thinking of something much more of like pulling different quotes from the movie and like doing little bits of the scenes from the movie. But when it came down to it, that's not really like how my brain prepares, or yours, I guess, because we both did something that was much more organic and much more just on the fly, much less scripted, I suppose, than what I initially thought we would end up doing, much less a bit or a skit. And
in my defense, I often do bits.
You do sometimes do bits.
I do often come in with a relatively high concept and then
true.
just do that very quickly, but yes.
It's true. And like once I rhymed on accident, and that was really fun, but I didn't like plan it, you know? So going into these, when I saw that, we're going to do fake trailers, like, of course you get bits of lines and bits of dialogue in it, but ultimately it was just kind of making fun of what trailers are.
Yeah, it's interesting when you distill down not even a film into a trailer, which is difficult enough to do, but when you distill down the concept of a film, and you were just taking, I was talking about how you identify parody and satire by identifying those markers, right? What is definitive of this text? And the interesting thing that they've done here is take just those things which are definitive of the text, right? There's nothing else. There's no connective material in these films. It's just the high points. And when you distill that down, you get something that, it doesn't resemble a film, but does resemble a trailer in a really interesting way, in an incomplete way, which is, I guess, kind of true of the parody throughout Tropic Thunder. Like, it feels as though you're recognizing something, but maybe you're not understanding the substance of it.
Yeah.
We'll get to all of that, of course, but first, let's do the trailer game, shall we?
Okay. Born into the Hollywood limelight, America's brightest young filmmaker dares to expose the seedy underbelly of the movie industry. In this stunning, scathing documentary, Ben Stiller will reveal a culture replete with racism, homophobia, fatphobia, and the exploitation of American veterans. In a bombastic tour de force of award-winning actors, beloved Fall Guys, and Tom Cruise as you've never seen him before, Ben Stiller brings you Tropic Thunder. I went the other way.
I see what you did. I see how you, anticipating a zag, decided to zig.
What if I satired instead of spoofed?
The double reverse satire.
I double reverse satire.
Most people can't pull that off. They can't stick the landing. But you're not most people.
I spoofed a genre.
You did
the
a whole
genre
thing.
was trailers. Thanks.
Genius. So let's talk a little about how this godforsaken movie came to be. In 1984, J.G. Ballard's partly autobiographical novel Empire of the Sun is published. This is the story of a young English boy stranded in Japanese-held Shanghai in the aftermath of the attack on Pearl Harbor.
This is a Christian Bale movie.
In December 1941. It is, in
John
fact,
Malkovich.
Becomes a Christian Bale movie, yes. Yeah. John Malkovich, Miranda Richardson, and Nigel Havers. The book is incredibly well regarded. It is an award-winning novel. It is hailed by The Guardian of London as, quote, a very considerable achievement, a novel of clear moral purpose and power, excellently designed and beautifully written. It is then adapted into a movie by Tom Stoppard.
Whoa.
To be directed by Steven Spielberg.
I thought that was
this
Spielberg.
is
Damn.
big stuff. This is high art meets the popcorn Cineplex. Janet Maslin of the New York Times wrote that the film possessed, quote, a visual splendor, a heroic adventurousness, and an immense scope that makes it unforgettable. That's The Empire of the Sun from 1987, a movie about which, ironically, many people have forgotten.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, still a titanic accomplishment of literary movie making. What it also possessed, very deep in the ensemble, is a young writer who has just started getting attention after making a 10-minute parody of the Martin Scorsese film The Color of Money, starring Tom Cruise and Paul Newman.
I've seen that one.
The producers at Saturday Night Live like the short and eventually get around to offering this young man a spot in the writer's room right before he signs up to appear in The Empire of the Sun. That young man's name is Ben Stiller. And it's on the set of The Empire of the Sun that he conceives of this scathing Hollywood satire, an attack on self-important actors who conduct themselves as though what they are doing on set is more important than the actual historical events. 2 decades later, after working on only 4 episodes of Saturday Night Live, after working on a self-titled show for MTV that was a huge hit, and then a different self-titled show for Fox, which was also a huge hit, after coming up with really interesting directorial work like Reality Bites and The Cable Guy, and then finally really breaking out with Zoolander in 2001, Stiller was ready to make his magnum opus.
Wow. So Stiller directed Reality Bites?
He sure did.
Holy smokes,
He's
I had no idea.
all over the 90s. He is in weird little pockets all over the 90s.
That's so surprising to me.
Do you want to tell me how you came to be aware of Ben Stiller?
Oh, gosh. Yeah. I mean, it probably was. Zoolander was the big one, right? I think Something About Mary was also Ben Stiller, too, I think. There were a few things like that were I was not particularly interested in, but it seemed like for a minute he was everywhere. Because I remember, Meet the Parents, and I kind of liked Keeping the Faith, which was him and Ed Norton.
Sure.
He just seemed like he was in every other movie for a while, but most of the time he wasn't doing something that I found particularly engaging. He
really did work a lot, is
right?
the thing, and continues to, honestly, yeah.
Which great,
but you're right. That late '90s run he does. There's Something About Mary in '98. He does Mystery Man in 1999, which was a very big hit for the size of its production. Yeah, Keeping the Faith is 2000, and then Zoolander's 2001. So he really is on a marked rise right there at the end of the '90s. After basically working in the industry for a full decade before that. And then he's gone into, I think, a really interesting phase in his career. I find him most interesting now, where he's working with Noah Baumbach, where he's like giving these much quieter and more complex and more interesting performances. I think I like him, and I don't like him very much as an actor, honestly, but I think I liked him more as an actor than I do either as a writer or a director. Do you kind of share that feeling?
Yeah, I think it's While We're Young is the Baumbach that we just saw together.
Yes.
And I really liked him in that. I thought that was a really lovely and nuanced performance. That was special.
Surprisingly subtle, surprisingly confident, although he's playing the typical neurotic figure that he usually plays, but you get the sense that it is more of a performance than it is in some other films. It's nice to see him alongside, Adam Driver, alongside Naomi Watts, who's also just terrific in that film. Yeah, I think that's probably my favorite Baumbach. And he's in Meyerowitz, too. He's in Meyerowitz Stories. So that's an
I haven't seen that one, though. So,
So it's nice to see him doing that kind of work. I like he's aging into a really interesting character actor.
I think so too. I'm so glad.
And I enjoyed that more than I enjoyed his movie star persona through the late 90s into the 2000s, for sure. In 1998, Stiller goes to Justin Theroux to help develop the script. The original idea focuses on actors who suffer from PTSD following a fake movie boot camp, which is maybe not a great idea, but they eventually arrive at this very straightforward and not at all sweaty concept of actors believing that they are shooting a film even though it's all real. So they are consciously and deliberately satirizing Vietnam movies, from Apocalypse Now to Platoon to Full Metal Jacket. They then hire screenwriter Ethan Coen, not to be confused with Ethan Coen, one of the Coen brothers. This is a different guy.
Oh my God, really?
Entirely different career, but as you can expect, there's a lot of confusion there. Yes. The original casting concept was Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves was going to play Tug, and Stiller would play the Matthew McConaughey role, but it was felt at the time that Keanu wasn't a reliable comedy star. So poor Ben Stiller had no choice but to step up and play the lead in his $100 million action movie himself.
It happens. It's a real shame.
Stiller then wanted Tom Cruise to play the agent, to play the Matthew McConaughey role, doing, of course, a conscious riff on Jerry Maguire.
Naturally.
But it's Cruise that suggests that the agent is not an interesting enough character to provide balance in the movie, and what you need is a studio exec. That's what you need to push back against the actors. So he conceives of the character of Les Grossman himself.
Wow.
And pitches it to Stiller, who then writes the part.
Okay.
It's a really weird choice. There's a certain narrative, I think, that's in the popular culture. If anyone thinks of Tropic Thunder now at all, they often think of it in terms of this is Cruise bouncing back from Lions for Lambs, that he does this very serious, very kind of po-faced, sub-Sorkin kind of movie. And because it is a failure, he responds by going as hard as he can in the other direction. But that isn't true, because we're almost complete with principal photography on Tropic Thunder by the time that Lions for Lambs is released.
Whoa, okay.
So it's not a pushback. He is just trying to do everything. He is swinging as hard as he can in every possible direction in the hope that something will work, that something will stick, that something will rehabilitate his image in the public mind and give him a career path for the next decade of his life, which ultimately he gets to, but we're not there yet, that's for sure. This is, I think, one of the few uncontroversial things that you can say about Tropic Thunder. The ensemble cast is amazing. It is ridiculous. To get those people at that time in this film is just preposterous, right? So you've got Stiller himself, who, is a capable enough actor and who is, as an actor, probably never riding higher than he is here in, 5 years out from Zoolander, but still, like, that's somewhat fresh in the mind, and that's kind of a comedic tour de force. You've got Robert Downey Jr., who shoots this before the release of Iron Man, rehabilitates his public image. Yeah. It comes out 3 months after the first Iron Man movie, which is wild to think about. Wild. You've got Jack Black at the absolute height of his popularity. This is the same year as Kung Fu Panda and Be Kind Rewind, and we haven't yet hit Year One or Gulliver's Travels or Bernie, which is a run that basically shuts down his live-action movie career. He just sinks his career the year after Tropic Thunder. But right now, he's as hot as he's ever going to be. We get Matthew McConaughey 3 years before The Reconnaissance.
He's fucking brilliant in this. He's so good. He's my favorite part by far.
But this is a time, this is the historical context that we need, right? Because nobody was thinking about Matthew McConaughey in 2007, 2008. Nobody is thinking about him, and he's absolutely perfect. Brandon T. Jackson, we've got right before it looks like he's going to be huge. He actually never turns out to be huge, but this is right before he's cast in Fast and Furious and right before he's cast in the Percy Jackson movie.
That's what I recognize him from,
We've got Steve Coogan, who is right in the middle of his major charm offensive trying to break America. He too will not actually succeed, but we've got Jay Baruchel, we've got Danny McBride, we've got Nick Nolte. It is just a wild cast. Who stands out for you positively? Who comes out of this movie looking good?
Absolutely McConaughey.
Absolutely McConaughey.
I know that I already kind of threw that away, but yes, absolutely McConaughey I thought was the best and the funniest, and I could see where there was a little bit of his Wolf of Wall Street guy in this guy.
Yep.
So that was just a lot of fun and really delightful. I do think that Robert Downey Jr. does a nice job, but I just think the character, I think it's all just so misguided and terrible and should not happen. So it's hard to...
Let's put a pin in that, because that is the major topic that you have to talk about when you're talking about Tropic Thunder. I will say that the other actor I think who comes out beautifully from this film is Jay Baruchel. I think he just does great.
Who is that?
Sandusky, the good guy. He will eventually, of course, go on to voice Hiccup in How to Train Your Dragon. From which he has made, I bet, tens of millions of dollars.
That's so cute.
From that ongoing franchise.
Sure.
He's, I think, really quite good.
Okay.
But I think most of the cast manages to escape. And of course, we're just talking about men here because there are only men here. Apart from women who are playing themselves, Tyra Banks, Maria Menounos, right? There are literally no named female characters in this entire film. Every single female character that we see on screen in the script is listed as somebody's assistant or somebody's secretary. Damn. There are no named women in this film.
That's terrible. And when I was doing my trailer game, I was like, I guess I can leave out misogyny because there are no women in here. Not realizing, wait.
Is that not? But in a way, is that not? Well, I don't know, right? This is the problem with analyzing satire is, are you doing this on purpose or are you doing this by accident?
Right.
This is always, I think, the problem when you're looking at these kinds of films. And as I was saying back at the beginning of the episode, there's that problem of intentionality. Is this joke intentionally funny? Is this joke unintentionally funny? Is this joke intentionally unfunny? Which is also a thing that you can do in satire.
And might be a thing that we did. That's interesting. That might be a thing that they did in Tropic Thunder.
I think in particular, the trailer for The Fatties, Fart 2, the absolutely reprehensible, Eddie Murphy, really taking a brickbat to Eddie Murphy
For real, yeah.
As we should in that period in Eddie Murphy's career, honestly. But I think that is, a sequence of jokes that are deliberately not funny. In a way that's intended to highlight, the vacuity of, they're all intended to highlight the vacuity, I suppose. We'll talk about those. The movie shoots on the Hawaiian island of Kauai with some internals picked up at Universal Studios in Hollywood. It is the largest production ever to shoot on the island and contributes an estimated $60 million to the local economy. Wow. Tropic Thunder, as far as Kauai is concerned, a huge success.
Okay.
And remains, weirdly, a very popular film there.
That's so strange.
Principal photography lasts 13 weeks, running from July to December of 2007. So July to December of 2007. Lions for Lambs comes out November 2007. Just to slot that into the Tom Cruise story there. They shoot with 2 ground units and 1 aerial unit, all of which are working simultaneously. They just need that much footage
Holy
to make
smokes.
the film work. And
Yeah.
13 weeks is, just not
It's
that
not very much time. Yeah.
The movie's shot by John Toll, the extremely accomplished and experienced cinematographer who we've already discussed because he shot The Last Samurai for Edward Zwick and he shot Vanilla Sky for Cameron Crowe. And this movie, I think, looks great.
It does.
I think this is
It does look great.
gorgeous looking
Yeah.
movie that is both absolutely imitative of the style of these kinds of films. We get all of the glamour shots that you associate with Platoon, with Full Metal Jacket. We get
You really do.
the helicopters low over the jungle, and it all,
Yeah.
I think, looks sumptuous. But it also has a sense of its own integrity, even as it's playing with this reflexivity. It's crossing the line of the fictional action, right?
Yes.
Even as we're moving in and out of what is fiction, I think he manages to hold it really, really beautifully. It's a good-looking film. Did it strike you as being particularly well composed?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. No, and I had a note that like this is a very expensive comedy. Like I can't imagine how
$100 million.
That's so many millions of dollars.
And this is kind of it for that budget being spent on comedy. We're just not going to do that anymore. Really, after this period, you get a couple more years of the last few churning through the studio system, but then we're just going to, because it just becomes Iron Man, right? It just becomes making Marvel movies 100%. And putting all of our comedic energy, such as there is, into those films instead. Interestingly, John Toll is going to go off from, having shot The Last Samurai, having shot Vanilla Sky, having shot Tropic Thunder, he's naturally going to make the obvious pivot. His next film is Complicated with Nancy Meyers.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Also a gorgeous looking movie that comes up surprisingly often here on the podcast.
So funny.
We also have, I don't know if you noticed, but there's a little bit of product placement in this film. Did you notice any iconic product placement here? I just pulled out a few. Westinghouse TVs, Voss Water, Diet Coke, Forbes Magazine, Vanity Fair Magazine, Vibe Magazine, Daily Variety, the newspaper, TiVo, Tiger Beer, North Face backpacks, RCA phones, Qualcomm phones, AT&T, Ralph Lauren polos, Lacoste polos, Oakley, the Nintendo Wii, M&M's, the Apple iPod, the Apple MacBook, the Apple Thunderbolt display, Logitech headsets and earbuds, and I'm probably missing a few more too.
Holy smokes.
$100 million budget and an estimated $25 million in product placement in this film. Once you start seeing it,
well, the TiVo one is obvious, but holy smokes.
It's the moment when Les Grossman gets up from behind his desk and is just casual, renowned actor Tom Cruise just casually holding a copy of Maxim magazine with the logo pointed toward the camera. Bad taste in the mouth. Really bad taste in the mouth.
Wow.
The score is composed by Theodore Shapiro, who is a long-term
The score was good.
collaborator. He and Stiller have worked together a lot. And he actually works with, the whole of the late 90s frat pack. He's kind of bouncing around that whole, the Owen Wilson and that entire group.
Frat pack, did you say?
The frat pack, yeah. It's primarily Ben Stiller. He is like the anchor point of the frat pack. It's Owen Wilson and Luke Wilson and Jack Black. Sometimes Will Ferrell gets folded into that. Steve Carell has repeatedly tried to fold himself. This is actually true, and if you go and look it up, it's kind of depressing. He repeatedly claims in interviews that he was like adopted by these guys, and he is a part of the frat pack, and they have never said word one about it, which is really interesting.
So cute.
And the other guy who's kind of orbiting that is, of course, Paul Rudd.
Yeah,
who's kind of in that same milieu. But really, it's Stiller and the Wilsons and Jack Black is kind of,
Okay.
Owen Wilson was actually, this is a sad story, so forgive the gear shift here, but Owen Wilson was actually cast in this film in the Matthew McConaughey role. Matthew McConaughey replaced Owen Wilson after Owen Wilson's well-publicized suicide attempt shortly prior to the commencement of principal photography on this film.
God.
But he's doing great now, by all accounts. And is an actor that I continually really like.
Really like him in things.
Just really like him in things.
Absolutely.
Even when I shouldn't. Even when I oughtn't. You do get a strong sense of the frat pack from the work of Theodore Shapiro because he comes to attention for his score for Wet Hot American Summer in 2001. Then he scores Along Came Polly and Starsky and Hutch and 13 Going on 30 and Dodgeball, another great Ben Stiller role that I really like. He goes on to score Jennifer's Body and We're the Millers, the Paul Feig Ghostbusters, A Simple Favor, which has a pretty great score, as I recall. And of course, America's favorite Tom Holland, Will Smith animated movie, Spies in Disguise. What if James Bond turned into a pigeon? This question we've been asking since time immemorial.
Yeah.
The movie is originally scheduled for July 11th, 2008, but is pushed back to August 13th, partly to provide extra post-production time because this is obviously a complicated film to put together, and partly because the middle of August has proved itself to be safe ground for R-rated comedies. It goes in at number 1 at the box office, displacing The Dark Knight, believe it or not, which is now in its 5th week and has made almost $500 million.
Damn.
The animated Star Wars The Clone Wars movie is a new release at number 3, and the Kiefer Sutherland horror movie Mirrors is a new release at number 4. The chaotic Seth Rogen, James Franco comedy Pineapple Express is at number 5. Mamma Mia is in its 5th week at number 7 at the box office.
Okay.
And Vicky Cristina Barcelona opens at number 10.
What a time to be alive.
Yeah, ooh, there's some highs and lows there, for sure. Tropic Thunder opens to $26 million and remains number 1 for 4 weeks. It eventually makes $110 domestic and $196 million worldwide off of its budget of $98 million, which makes it, considering its very high advertising budget, a really, really modest success. It kind of scrapes into profitability and not much further. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine anybody buying this on DVD.
It was actually a huge DVD seller.
No way.
Yes.
God, I just never understand.
People bought DVDs
nature.
back in 2008.
They did.
It was a big deal.
Yeah.
Interestingly, Robert Downey Jr.'s appearance in the film causes just a little controversy and is completely overshadowed by protests over the discussion of intellectual disability and much more urgently.
How did I leave that out? Yeah, damn.
Perhaps
I knew I was missing something when I started my list.
Most distinctive scene.
Shit.
Which is really unfortunate.
Really unfortunate and bad. Yeah.
The other thing that the film really
word.
gets marked for is the anti-Semitic quality of Tom Cruise's portrayal of Les Grossman, which seems to be so deliberately anti-Semitic as to be indefensible, as to be unsupportable, right?
God. Wow. This movie.
In advance of the release, a coalition of more than 20 disability advocacy groups approached DreamWorks with protests, particularly over the use of the R word in the film. DreamWorks promises them that the film is not as bad as they think. It's not as bad as the trailers are making it seem. They offer them an advance screening to reassure them that the film really has a better heart than the trailers might make it seem. That screening gets pushed back a couple of times until finally the screening happens the same day as the premiere. Members and representatives from these 20 disability advocacy groups go to see the movie, walk out saying, yes, that's exactly what we said was the problem.
Of course.
And go immediately to picket the premiere.
Awful.
Let's talk then, because we have to, about Downey. Let's talk about the decision to consciously and deliberately, in the year of our Lord 2008, release a film prominently featuring blackface.
Insane. Well, and I just watched the actual trailer out of curiosity before I did my trailer game, and they were really hitting that hard. Like, no, we're doing this as a joke. It's on purpose as a joke, but we know that it's bad. We know that it's bad. And here is an actual black character saying that it's bad, so you know that we know. It's still bad. It is extremely bad. It's just a mistake. It's gross. It's uncomfortable the entire way through. I don't like it.
No, I don't like it either. I mean, for all the reasons you just listed, we oughtn't to be doing this.
Yes.
Here's the conundrum. Here's the paradox of Tropic Thunder. Robert Downey Jr. is the best thing in this film.
Oh, yeah.
It is an absolutely phenomenal performance
that he gives just in the original pretend trailer for Satan's Alley or whatever it is. Shut up. Why is that so good? Yeah. Extraordinary. Yeah. He's just giving everything he's got.
As is Tobey Maguire, which is lovely to see.
Yeah, that's right, Tobey Maguire.
Uncredited in the film. This is them leveraging their time on screen together in Wonder Boys. They had this kind of connection and chemistry then. So they're calling in some favors for the production of this movie. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We shouldn't have done this character. We shouldn't have done the character of Kirk Lazarus. We shouldn't have made this decision. But it gives RDJ an opportunity to dial into his intensity in a way that he really, really rarely gets to. This is much more, kiss, kiss, bang, bang kind of RDJ than it is Iron Man RDJ, where he's so in control of himself and in control of his instrument. His comic timing is basically pitch perfect. I think he delivers enormous emotion and complexity. And when he's called upon to do the monologues, he delivers the monologues with such power and commitment that he is an undeniable actor.
Yeah.
That's really, I think, something that has kind of shaken out of RDJ's reputation over the last 20 years of playing Iron Man is he's an amazing actor.
Yeah.
Right? And that's it. But he just does that now. And that's great. I mean, yes, you're right. It's a great performance, but he is capable of this incredibly complex and challenging and difficult thing. And the fact that he is so successful at it, the fact that he can compel you and make you feel bad about this thing that you are already condemning, I find to be really inspiring. I think it's just a knockout performance. He is nominated, of course, for Best Supporting Actor for this role, which is wild. And I think genuinely had a chance of taking it. Yeah, he's up against Josh Brolin for Milk. He's up against Philip Seymour Hoffman for Doubt. He's up against Michael Shannon for Revolutionary Road. And the winner is the posthumous award given to Heath Ledger for The Dark Knight.
Jesus.
Like, that is maybe the best supporting actor field that you're going to get in the 2010s. It's
wild.
Absolutely extraordinary. And I really
absurd.
do. I'm freaked out a little bit by how much I like what Downey Jr. is doing in this movie. I think it's tremendous.
I just don't think that I ever got comfortable enough to sink into it and enjoy his performance.
Yeah, no, I think it's not comfort, but it is these moments of transcendence, the moments of just delivering the thing that's on the page and doing it so well with such complete commitment that it actually, starts to play, I think. I don't know. We'll maybe talk a little bit about it as we move through. But again, to circle back, we shouldn't have done it.
No.
Don't do it. Don't do it. It's very bad.
That's bad.
Right? And you don't get the pass. We've discussed this in other ways in the past, of course, here on the podcast. But you don't get a pass for doing the bad thing just because you're acknowledging that you're doing the bad thing.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Shall we get into, in what I'm sure will be an abbreviated episode of The Last Star in Hollywood? Shall we get into the beat by beat here? We begin with what is probably, I mentioned earlier, I think this is the film's most enduring element. This is the film's most enduring impact. The fake trailers, the fake commercials.
The fake trailers are pretty great, actually.
At the beginning of the movie. Do you think so?
I mean, as a, what did you say? A spoof? Yeah. Yes.
I don't know. I think that the Scorcher trailer is extremely bad.
Scorcher is bad.
The fake action, like, it doesn't work as a parody of action movie trailers, as a spoof of action movie trailers. I think it just doesn't really work.
Yeah, Scorcher is really bad.
The commercial for Al Pacino's butt sweat is
also terrible.
Very terrible, but is, I think, closer
booty
to
sweat.
the booty sweat. Sorry,
even worse.
It is closer to the mark. Is closer to what it's aiming at. At least, I do think that the Fatties is completely gross, but is the best take that they have.
Is so smart as far as
that is
the
immediate
directly reminder of all of those. Yes, absolutely.
Everything that Eddie Murphy was doing in those years. And then Satan's Alley is kind of playing it a little too hard. I think if they dialed that trailer back by like 10 to 15%, it might have been more convincing as a trailer for a real film.
It was very like Da Vinci Code is what it put me in mind of.
That's the weird thing, right? But we're obviously echoing, Brokeback and the success of that film. But the Da Vinci Code of it all is a little bit strange too. Yeah. So from there, because we have this extremely sweaty premise that we have to communicate, we kind of kick into high gear to make that happen. We kind of just really start laying out the exposition. We establish the setup for this, the film within the film, right? This Vietnam era spin on Saving Private Ryan. We cut into the action. We get this great opening action sequence with the helicopters over the jungle. We kind of do the greatest hits of this kind of movie. We're drenched in gore and in profanity, and we culminate in Stiller's glamour shot, his arms raised platoon glamour shot there at the beginning, which of course, as soon as you see that, you know that that's going to be the last shot of the plot here. We get the extended emotional farewell, and it kind of starts to bog down by the time that we call cut on this sequence. Does it work for you in any way besides like the obvious pastiche?
Besides the obvious pastiche, no, it doesn't really work for me, I have to say. I mean, it's not my kind of movie anyway.
Sure.
So then once I get the bit, I get the bit. I found the makeup work on the hands to be so gruesome and unsettling, which it's obviously supposed to be, but it was just a little stomach turning for me and not maybe funny enough for myself.
Then play the coward's trick and cut out to newsreel exposition with Maria Menounos. I was only vaguely aware of Maria Menounos as a real person. She sometimes bothers me before I'm watching a movie in a theater. But apart from that, I have never seen her or heard her.
Forgot all about her. Yeah.
So she's just like an entertainment journalist, I guess. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So she introduces us to our core cast. She sketches characterization of all of our heroes. And then in short order, we introduce Matthew McConaughey as Peck, Tug's agent, and we introduce Bill Hader, who really doesn't have a role in this film except to be Bill Hader, I guess. Which is maybe true of most films that Bill Hader's in, honestly.
Yes, I think so. He's always just doing that same thing, for sure.
And then it's Cruise playing Grossman. Oh, and I guess we also get Nick Nolte here. In what I'm sure is a fun performance for Nick Nolte.
Sure.
It's a little bit, when we get to the reveal that he too is fake.
Yeah.
I do kind of like that. I think that is the film really wrestling with its own inheritance here, right? As a movie that is occupying the shadowed space beneath all of these great texts in the genre. I like the idea that this too is kind of, even within the fiction, it's kind of self-reflexively falling foul of the same traps there.
Yeah.
What do you think of Cruise? This is obviously the largest swing that he's ever going to take in his career in terms of physical performance, in terms of parodying his own movie star status, certainly. What do you think?
So I had no idea what to expect going in. Initially, I had it in my head that he was doing something where he was like basically playing himself. So then when I heard, no, that's not the case, I imagined him doing something that was a much more like sweaty, haunted. I thought maybe he'd have like one eye patch, you know, some kind of like Stallone Rambo in the jungle thing. So I was ready for that.
So you're thinking of him playing the Nick Nolte character, in effect. Yeah, interesting.
Basically. So when he finally did appear on screen doing something so entirely different, I was really surprised by it. And I think he works for me best when he's doing his stupid dance. Like,
I hate the dance.
I know that it's dumb and terrible.
But at least the dance doesn't suffer from the terrible writing that the rest of his appearances on screen suffer from. Yeah.
But it reminds me of just like what a physical actor he is actually.
That's
and like
very
he's
true.
wearing this, you know, bodysuit to plump him up or whatever. And
the prosthetics are wild.
Are really good.
They're actually really
good.
And must have been expensive. His oversized hands are unpleasant.
Ew, they're so unpleasant.
Like unpleasant in two different ways, right?
Yeah.
Unpleasant because of, yes, the rank anti-Semitism, right? You don't have to lean into this kind of physical characterization and then have him talk about, you know, Purim. Have him deliberately lean into it's really, I think that might be even more ill-advised than the blackface.
Stiller
honestly.
is himself Jewish, though, isn't he?
Yeah. Which
That's
is why
so
he can do it.
So why he thinks,
because he is representative of all Jewish people and does not need to worry about a, you know, documented history of anti-Semitism in the United States.
Yeah, I don't love that.
It's a problem. Yeah. It's a real problem. But yeah.
Interesting.
But even stripping all of the anti-Semitism out of it, it's still just a grossly caricatured physical representation of a human being.
Just a gross guy.
Unpleasant.
Yeah, for sure.
Unpleasant
gross
for sure.
man.
I think that his dialogue is just not as sharp. I love the idea in theory, yes. Just give Tom Cruise all of this profanity. Just let him loose in a way that we've never seen him do before. But it's just not sharp enough. It's not well written enough. It is just too insubstantial. And I wonder, honestly, how much of an input Cruise had on those lines, on those scenes. I wonder how much of this... Are we seeing what Tom Cruise thinks is funny? Is that what's happening here?
Oh.
Because by all accounts, he too decided on the dance. The dance was not supposed to be a part of the movie, particularly the final dance to Ludacris.
Right.
That was not supposed to be in the film. That was not in the original version of the script. He came up with that idea on set and just wanted to do it. So I really wonder, is this what Tom Cruise thinks is funny?
Yeah.
Because
I don't know.
That might make a lot of sense, honestly.
Sure. I don't know. That's really interesting.
So we do our first round of character introductions, then we circle back to the party and we do exactly the same set of character introductions again for no reason that I can really discern. And then before we know it, we're in the jungle. We get stranded in the jungle, which is, it is a very sweaty idea, but I do appreciate the fact that we get to it fast.
Yeah.
And I do like the idea that the timing is at least strong. I think that Stiller is a good editor. I think that he has a mastery of how to combine moments into a film with a real sense of pace, right? If you think back to Reality Bites in particular, right? Reality Bites is just...
I've never seen it.
Oh, we should add, that should be on the list. That's God knows
great.
I want to watch that more than I want to watch Zoolander again.
That would be a really nice one to put on the list.
Reality
I like
Bites
that.
would be
Reality
a lot of
Bites.
And he's so warm in that period of his career too. It's before he kind of gets a little hardened by the industry. So Reality Bites, is a very, I think that would be an interesting one to go back to for sure.
Much more my speed for sure.
I love the moment where Steve Coogan is exploded.
You do.
I could live with any film that Steve Coogan is in, having Steve Coogan be exploded very early.
Yeah.
No, the thing that I love about that is how understated it is.
It
in
is.
That moment, it
happens so fast.
It's so fast. It's so good. It's followed by Ben Stiller dicking around with a severed head for, I don't know, what feels like 20 minutes afterwards. But not.
And I
so great.
didn't love I don't know. I guess I'm not cool or funny, but I don't think landmines are funny.
Sure. I mean, if you step out to that distance, you're absolutely right. Maybe we ought not to be making fun of this. You're right. But on the other hand, it is Steve Coogan.
Yeah, I hear you.
So if someone has to step on a landmine, it should be a character that he's portraying for sure. We move into the second act. At that point, we're staging a firefight with the Flaming Dragon, the local drug cartel, and they are coincidentally driven off when Cody detonates the prepared charge.
Right.
And then it's just a lot of string of pearls plot. We just walk through the jungle a lot and we have these conversations that generally don't go anywhere. And it's beautifully shot.
It is beautifully
really,
shot.
really nicely shot. And you can feel, I think, how expensive this film is.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. You feel the money burning.
We've got this weird B-plot that we set up here that we will then literally set aside for a full hour. This is when Cody and Tabak, the Nolte character, investigate the scene of Damien's death, and this is where it's revealed that Tabak has hands, and that then they are captured by the flaming dragon, and what was sweaty before is now positively dripping. But we then set them aside for a full hour, and they really don't serve that much point in the rest of the film. I wonder if this was folded in after the fact to offer, I don't know, just some extra justification or something to give Danny McBride work, maybe? I don't think that he's great in this film, I will say.
No, pretty forgettable.
I should mention, too, that right before we do that is when we get the reel for Robert Downey Jr.'s career for the next couple of years. I guess not really for the next couple of years. I felt like I saw that thing 1,000 times.
I never did.
But
That's
I couldn't have done because Iron Man came out 3 months before this. And I guess he's not Iron Man just off the strength of the first film, right? It remains to be seen if that can be repeated, I suppose. But certainly it was something that was repeated just over and over and over, just driven into the ground, right? This is like a real pre-Borat meme.
Yeah,
that is a lucky escape for sure.
It really was.
And I mentioned how like inconsequential this part of the film is, but the next event of note is the scene at the riverbank where they get Sandusky the map because he's the only one who can read it, because he's the only one who actually went to the boot camp to train for the movie, which is, again, that's a joke I like.
Cute.
That's a cute thing. Yeah. And this is where they part ways. This is where Stiller goes off by himself. Any of this working for you as we move in? How are you feeling about Al Pacino?
I still don't like the name joke.
It's not a good name
joke.
And
no.
If you're going to do that name joke, why then highlight it at the end of the movie? Like, if you're going to do it, just do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it and then pretend like it's clever 4/5 of the way through the movie, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Him and Sandusky, I think, are my favorites in these moments, even though I know I should love RDJ. And I do love him. But again, I just find the whole thing just like really skin crawly to watch. Sure. And Ben Stiller is doing absolutely nothing for me. Like, this is just not something that I find interesting for him to do.
Yeah. It is a thing that I think is pretty common in his leading man performances in particular. He has what strikes me as a real self-regard. Like I made the joke earlier, right, about Keanu Reeves definitely wouldn't work in this film. He's not tested as like a comedy leading man. So poor Ben Stiller has to step in and be like the incredibly heroic action guy.
I think Keanu Reeves would have been hilarious. I think he would have been really funny.
I think you're right.
Because
I think that Ben Stiller wanted this role himself.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any question about that. Particularly the way that it's constructed, right? Because at this point, when they separate on the riverbank, this is where we go off as he slowly begins to unravel. He slowly begins to lose his mind alone in the jungle, right? We get him under the tarpaulin watching Kirk fight the Gorn on his little iPod thing that he's got with him. And then the murder of the panda, which is...
God,
in a movie just stuffed to the gills with stupid, excessive, undermotivated bits. Yeah. This is maybe the worst, just in terms of like its
little
utter
commercial
irrelevance.
Thing that they had done before about him like bonding with the panda,
right? Which we cut to like 4 minutes before, so that we can establish it. Like it's in the last minute, and there are moments in this film where it feels as though the comedic pacing is written in strictly linear order. Right? They finish a scene and then they go and write the next scene.
Yes,
and it
one SNL skit after another.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. But then at the same time, we cut from him to the rest of the squad, and now we're starting to get like a little bit of development. We've got Jack Black raging for his heroin, which isn't necessarily very funny, but it is giving him something to do.
It gives him something to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly right.
And this is where we're really leaning into the tension between Chino and Lazarus. This is where we get the beat with the most prominent use of the N-word. And this is the moment that RDJ absolutely gets me, when he's holding Chino like to his shoulder.
Yes.
And he gets that middle distance stare and is talking about that word has kept us down for 400 years.
So
that is a real performance. That is a moment of transcendent acting. He absolutely delivers in that moment. Even as you're aware, this is terrible.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be doing this. You disagree?
No, I don't disagree. It's true. I just think it shouldn't have happened. Yeah. No, I know that's a tired drum to beat. But yes, I do
mean,
agree his performance is extraordinary.
By far the most important drum.
Yeah.
We ought to be keeping like a baseline rhythm on that drum.
Okay, well, that's me.
As we're kind of counterpointing, maybe there's some interesting texture here. I will say for the listener at home, if anyone is still listening here, almost an hour into our podcast on Tropic Thunder. This is like the most checked out that you have been on a movie in this entire run. I don't know where
definitely.
this bodes for its place on the big list at the end of our discussion here.
This there could not be a movie that is less for me than this one, I think.
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, we've talked a lot about boys movies lately, and the way that Cruise often, I think, just tumbles into boy movies.
Yeah.
But this is the boyest movie that we're probably ever going to cover.
Yeah.
This might be the boyest movie I've ever seen.
That's ever been made.
Yeah,
for sure. Frat pack indeed.
Right. So they load Portnoy onto the water buffalo because we have to do that for some reason, and they continue their trek. Speedman, meanwhile, is doing the prisoner of war thing. This is where we transition into the different kind of Vietnam movie where he's no longer stranded in the jungle by himself. Now he is an actual prisoner of war. This is, I think, the scene where he is like leaning into the performance and then leaning out of the performance is interesting.
Yeah.
I think we get to see
agree.
Stiller playing some cadence to Speedman in this scene. It's obviously, a little exploited by the trailer. I think if you've seen the trailer going into the movie, this moment's going to be spoiled for you, but it kind of works. And then we get, oh God, it's so difficult to make a hierarchical list of what is objectionable about this goddamn film.
Yeah.
But then we do Simple Jack.
Yes.
Which, as a parody of Forrest Gump, is not funny.
Already not funny.
And as a film that is supposed to exist within this world, kind of ruins the world, right? It kind
doesn't work at all, especially with the really terrible like wig and bad freckles and bad teeth that they give him. Like, it's just not fooling anybody. It does not work.
You cannot take something that would struggle to justify its own existence as a throwaway joke. If we'd had a 2-second cutaway to this is the kind of terrible film that he's been making.
Right.
You cannot take something that is that insubstantial and then make it structural in the back half of your film.
Tough. Yeah. Agreed. Very bad.
And of course, we don't even have time to talk about all of the horrifying, Orientalism that we're getting. All of these awful, awful tropes that we're getting through the back half of this film.
So terrible. Yeah.
Shocking.
Really embarrassing and gross. And skin crawly, as I've said. Yes.
Yeah. Back in LA, a breath of fresh air because Matthew McConaughey's back on screen, right?
Being hilarious about TiVo.
Goes to
That's
Grossman.
all I want.
So that we can get the ransom call, which is, and this is like a real scene from a real film. This is like something's
hilarious.
Happening here.
Yeah. Grossman on the phone for the ransom call and Matthew McConaughey just like sweating his body weight in the office is pretty hilarious, actually.
Matthew McConaughey as, I am a simple man possessed of one single principle, and I will pursue that principle to the end of my days. It's really like, I was thinking about it, and there's something about that dedication, there's something about that intensity that is like, oh yeah, there's something of his Interstellar performance here, right? There's something of like Matthew McConaughey
that, like,
at its
wide-eyed,
best,
mouth
exactly
open, sweat
right.
dripping thing. Yeah, for sure.
I know what is important, and I will navigate by those stars. Like that, it's good. And it is such a relief to cut out from the scenes in the jungle, particularly the scenes in the Flaming Dragon camp, and to cut back to LA and like, oh, this is just safe Hollywood satire.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing here. Okay. And I was wondering about whether or not this film would just have been better if we had stayed in LA, if we'd stayed in Hollywood, if this had been a film about the agents and the execs. No, if the actors just weren't present in the script, if it wasn't about arrogant actors, but was about, it was much more of the player. It was much more of like the poison of Hollywood itself. I think there's maybe something interesting that you could do there, but maybe we're just searching for something better than the film we're watching. And this, of course, is the scene that concludes with Les Grossman deciding that the best course of action is to let the Flaming Dragon have Speedman, then file an insurance claim, and everyone gets rich, and we dance to Flo Rida. That's how we get out of that scene.
Yeah.
Weird, right?
Weird.
I like, in a way, this is perhaps the thinnest praise that I can give a film, but I like the way that every single character in this movie has a very ABC, like Robert McKee's story. Like, this is a character arc. It is the barest sketch of a character arc, but it is a character arc. We are going to tempt Matthew McConaughey here with the promise of his G5 jet. And he is going to actually arc through it and become a better person as a result. We do that with every single person. The sole exception of this, which I find really interesting, is Al Pacino. Because the character arc that we give him is we imply that he is closeted, and then we have him with his boyfriend at the Oscar ceremony right at the very end of the movie. Yes, with boyfriend Lance Bass. Which is, That's cute, honestly. If you're going to do that, that's cute.
Yeah.
But that's not an arc as much as that is, or at least I suppose it is an arc, but it's completely informed, right?
Sure.
We don't see the movement of it. I do like the fact that when he is acknowledging, which I guess is pretty much our next scene, where he is kind of tacitly stepping around his public persona and the fact that he is closeted, nobody gives a damn. Like
At
nobody
all. That's
cares.
true. No one could care less.
All.
Yeah.
It is not played for anything. And if anything, the people that he is surrounded with at that point understand the difference between public persona and actual private life, which is there's something there.
Maybe
there's
interesting.
occasionally just a moment or two where it's the 1/4 portion. Sometimes you just make do with what you've got.
Yes.
Oh, I'll say too that this is the scene where Lazarus and Chino are spying on the camp and they see Speedman performing as Simple Jack. And this is where Downey gets some great lines about like theater craft. Like he's closing the aesthetic distance between himself and the character. It's just really nicely delivered, nicely composed and nicely delivered lines there.
Yeah,
I think.
he is lovely. It's true.
And from there, we kind of get into the very extended and far too long action sequence at the end of the film.
Yes.
We have Lazarus trying to fake his way into the camp with Portnoy strapped to the back of the water buffalo, which takes forever. And isn't particularly funny as it's unfolding. And then we're in gunfight mode.
Yep.
And that's basically the rest of it, right? We
do
the various rescues.
Run,
we do the feints,
you better do a bridge run. Yeah.
Yep. Portnoy resisting the urge of the giant mountain of heroin is pretty funny, at least. I think, it's funny in the fact that we are observing this incredibly elemental character arc. It is, as I said, just a real ABC character arc there. But
absolutely.
Yeah, it kind of is fine, but overall, I think this part just takes far too long. We get this weird feint with Stiller deciding that he is going to stay in the village because of his adopted son and then fleeing from, the host of armed men behind him across the bridge so we can blow the bridge, so we can get the recreation of the scene from the beginning of the film. Of course. We have to echo all of that. And then Matthew McConaughey shows up.
Yes.
Having somehow got to Vietnam very quickly.
To the jungle.
Or I guess Laos or Cambodia or
wherever
wherever
they were shooting. Yeah, exactly.
I do really consistently love Jay Baruchel's lines. I do really like how he is just bringing everything down and kind of anchoring it in a real experience. I think he does a great job.
I think so too.
The film would be much worse without him.
I completely agree.
Which is maybe the highest
very necessary character.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is there anything you want to say about the end of this film, about this action sequence here at the end?
No, again, like it all looked really good. It looked really expensive. Like they went
really
whole
good.
ham.
Yeah, you're right.
And you know what? Thumbs up for that.
That's true. And it's not easy to make that stuff look expensive.
No.
It's not easy to make it look like a real action movie, but they really do lean into that.
Yeah, no, they went all the way.
And that's it. Speedman gets his Oscar for the kind of behind the scenes story of what went wrong in the jungle, which feels kind of like a swing at, the Man of La Mancha.
Man of La Mancha is what I thought of. Yeah, definitely.
Which is so good. And then, the worst closing title sequence I've ever seen in my life, maybe?
I was a little bit amused by it, as I said before.
I
think that Tom Cruise's physicality is always compelling to me. And to see him like playing against type is compelling.
Yeah. It's the combination, I think, of that coupled with every expensive effects shot from the movie that we just watched. It's like every explosion is played again.
I forgot about that.
So that we can, intercut with the cruise dance routine, which interestingly doesn't look to be like terribly choreographed.
No, that's why it's so good, I think.
Yeah, you're right. If it had been better, it would have been worse.
Like, what if your dad got really drunk at a barbecue? You know what I mean? It's just kind of funny.
And happened to like Ludacris.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's Tropic Thunder. And
well, we did it.
Dear listener, thank you for making it this far. We're defeated. We know you are too. We know this is why
we had to have a 2-week break.
This was always, back at the beginning of the podcast.
We knew.
We looked at everything that Tom Cruise had done, and there were 3 things that were on the bubble. There was his appearance in Young Guns, which is an uncredited cameo. This is appearance in Austin Powers Goldmember, which is an uncredited cameo.
Yep.
And there's this. And I watched this film then. I watched this film,
I remember.
6 months ago or
God
whatever.
Bless you.
And said, no, we have to talk about it because it
is
a real performance.
You're right. We do.
But
we did.
Wow, I'm never going to watch this film again. And if there's some way that I can never think about this film again, that would be great.
Yep, agreed.
Let's have an interesting conversation.
Is it going to be interesting?
I think it's going to be very interesting.
Okay.
I think it's going to be very interesting. Where is Tropic Thunder going on the big list of every Tom Cruise movie ever? Now, we've established something really interesting about this list, which is that in a way we're talking about the Tom Cruise-ness of these movies as much as we are talking about their like objective quality.
It is a definitive list of Tom Cruise movies.
Exactly.
That's what it says.
And we're counting things like influence. We're counting things like how
iconicity always comes up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
there's nothing here, right? There's no iconicity here. There's no influence here. This does not change the arc of his career at all. It's conceivable that had this film been a much bigger success, had his performance been more lauded and less, shrouded in anti-Semitism, that maybe we would have seen a turn to Tom Cruise, like comedy stunt performer. Like he could have made at least a couple of these over the course of the next decade, but he never really does. And the next swing that he takes at comedy is Night and Day, where we reset hard to his action star persona. That film also sucks badly.
That's what you've said. I haven't seen it yet, but here we go.
It's going to be, but there's nothing, but there's nothing in that film that's as objectionable, as ill-conceived, as toxic as this film is.
That's good.
So right now, because of the way that our document is arranged here in Google Docs, we have a very convenient way of starting this discussion, because the first 21 films appear on the first page of the document. That is to say, everything from Jerry Maguire at number 1 down to Risky Business at number 21.
Mine
Not
is
on
all
yours,
of a
I
page.
guess. Look at that.
Mine's all one page.
Well, for me, the second page starts with Cocktail. And
I
I think Cocktail is arguably, if you take Tropic Thunder at its absolute best, if you are as generous as you can possibly be, I think it probably sits somewhere around Cocktail. If you come out of it as positive as you can possibly be. Which is to say that it's got an energy to it.
Okay.
It's got a style to it. It's got a look to it. It's doing something, and then it loses its way completely in a way that unravels everything that it's done before. Not to mention doing certain things that it just shouldn't do, right?
Yeah.
The treatment of
so
race and of representation in Tropic Thunder versus the treatment of, alcoholism and, alcohol in general, right? Alcohol culture, but alcoholism specifically in Cocktail. Not to mention how misogynistic and rank Cocktail is too.
No, true.
So somewhere around there is maybe the ceiling.
That's a high ceiling for me.
Well, I want to talk to you about the floor,
you.
Because, episode 1 of this podcast is number 28. It's our penultimate title on this list. That's Endless Love. And then Losing It has been at the dead bottom of our list since episode 4 of The Last Star in Hollywood. This is now episode 30. Is anything going to rival Losing It? I mean, Losing It is a gross, badly managed, malformed bit of work.
Yeah.
Is the same true of Tropic Thunder? Does Tropic Thunder get more of a pass because the highs are, I would say, higher?
I mean,
albeit maybe
it
not much
depends
higher.
on what highs you're talking about. Like, certainly the production value is very high.
Sure.
The movie looks expensive.
Matthew McConaughey, Jay
Matthew
Baruchel.
McConaughey is fine.
For
Matthew
me,
McConaughey
Downey.
Yeah, okay.
I think there are some good things.
The only thing I can think about that movie that I enjoyed, Losing It, that is, is Shelley Long and Tom Cruise on the beach.
Drinking tequila on the ridge over the
That was
Little
really
Cabana.
good. Yeah. That was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked that. And you're right. That's the only moment.
That's maybe 3 minutes. Oh no, we have her leaving the convenience store that she runs with her husband right at the beginning of the movie too.
Cute.
So there's maybe a total of 5 minutes of good stuff in Losing It. Is there 5 minutes of good stuff in Tropic Thunder? Are there 5 minutes that you enjoyed?
5 minutes.
I mean, you just said you liked the
maybe
dance at the end.
Maybe if you
That's
put
almost 5
everything
minutes.
that Matthew McConaughey does into like one long stream, that's probably close to 5. I mean, I could see it going above Losing It, and even maybe going above Endless Love, even though there were things about Endless Love that I found really captivating. To me, it sits around Taps, because I feel like the places in which it falls, to me, feel like the places where Taps falls, where it's like, I feel gross in my soul for having watched this and been told that it's entertainment.
Well, yes, and also the idea that Taps similarly is striving to make a point. It's a dramatic point in Taps rather than a comedic point. But Taps too is, I think, trying to say something in the way that
Taps satirical.
No.
Okay.
Taps is a straight drama. It just reads as satirical because it's kind of incompetent.
Okay.
Then we've got All the Right Moves just above that, and Lions for Lambs, of course, that we discussed in the last episode of the show, which I think also kind of falls at the first hurdle in terms of it expressing the political point that it wants to express. I think all of these films kind of suffer from the same issue. And Born on the 4th of July right above that too, right?
Yeah.
Born on the 4th of July, Lions for Lambs, All the Right Moves, Taps, those are movies which fail to do the thing that they are ostensibly doing. They are setting out a political agenda. They are setting out a cultural perspective, and they are failing to communicate those things well. Definitely Tropic Thunder falls into that category.
Yeah,
right?
I would agree.
So really, it's up to you. You're thinking just above Taps? You think it's stronger than Taps?
I think that if I had to watch either movie again, I would be more inclined to watch Taps.
Interesting.
I am thrown out so frequently from Tropic Thunder. I feel like Tropic Thunder hates me and wants me to know it.
Oh, Tropic Thunder is contemptuous of you. Tropic Thunder doesn't care about you at all. You're a woman. You have no place in Tropic Thunder's worldview. I'm sorry. Is your last name
true.
Assistant?
Yeah.
You're right. Actually, that definitively puts Tropic Thunder under All the Right Moves on the list as well, because at least All the Right Moves cares a little bit about women for a minute.
For a minute.
Okay. Let's put it in there. The new number 28 on the list, underneath Taps, above Endless Love, above Losing It. I don't know if we're going to be back down here in this part of the list again.
I hope not. Good Lord.
It's been a minute since I've seen Night and Day, but I don't remember it being this terrible.
Yeah.
And I've never seen Valkyrie, which is the movie that we are going to discuss next week, which is the second of 2 films that Tom Cruise makes with UA. You remember all that work we did establishing?
Right, to do United
taking
Artists.
over United Artists? Yeah, this is going to be the second and final film that he makes for
sadness.
United Artists.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about that next week. Everything we do here at The Last Star in Hollywood, everything we do at Next Word is possible because of you guys. You are the reason that we sat down and watched Tropic Thunder and then talked about it for an hour and 15 minutes.
And we love you anyway.
It's not that we're mad. It's not that we're mad. It's not your fault, you guys. You have suffered through this with us. I'm going to be really interested to see 6 months from now when all of the statistics have shaken out, what our most popular episodes are, because I feel like this one is going to be way down at the bottom.
Oh, I'm sure.
We could say anything right now and no one would know. No one is listening.
Which is too bad, because now it's time to thank our patrons.
Yes. If you support us at that $8 a month level, if you throw us, I guess, a cup of coffee each every month for these shows.
God, a cup of coffee really is $8 now.
Well, the place that we go, our little local coffee shop, and we don't get syrups and foams and creams and expressions and that stuff anyway. We're just like black coffee people.
Yeah,
here at Next Word.
The other day I got a cold brew with a half pump of lavender syrup.
You sure did, because you're fancy.
You know what? It was really lovely.
I got a hot Americano despite the fact that it was 80 degrees that day.
You are a hot Americano. No, you're not. You're a Scotsman. Anyway, I think you're handsome.
Tropic Thunder has destroyed our minds. We knew it was going to happen.
We knew
this has
it
been
would happen.
Hanging over us like a Damoclesian sword lo these many weeks. Elizabeth, would you thank our patrons before we finally melt into a puddle here?
Sure will. Many thanks to Leslie Skipa, to Louise in Dallas, Megan Lauder, Phoebe, Art Kilmer, Kimberly Bear, Self on a Shelf, Jolene Stark, Chris Dons, and the Lady Gordon.
Thank you guys so much for your
grateful.
support. We're so glad to be back from our little hiatus.
Yeah.
We have new podcasts coming your way, particularly you Patreon supporters.
Yes.
We're going to have the pilot, I guess we're calling it a pilot episode. We're trying something out, you guys.
It's a true pilot.
Yeah. We're really going to try something that we're not sure
it's a proof of concept.
is going to work. That's going to be coming out over on the Patreon page in, I guess, a few days as of this release. Or it might already be out. Or it might be out.
You know what?
Tomorrow.
We're working hard either way.
So stay tuned for that. As I said, next week we'll be back with Valkyrie, the week after that, Night and Day, and then a whole string of good movies.
Then it gets exciting again.
So many good films to look forward to here in the closing third of The Last Star in Hollywood. Thanks so much for listening, you guys. We'll be back next week with more. Until then, take care.
We'll see you soon.